Please welcome Fiber Broadband Association President and CEO, Gary Bolton.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. How many of you guys listen to Fiber for Breakfast? All right, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, as many of you know, we do Fiber for Breakfast online every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. I call it my weekly tutorial, where I get to sit down with a really amazing person from our industry and talk about topics that are real interesting to me and hopefully interesting to you. So I really appreciate you guys joining me on my journey on that. Today we're going to be holding a live session of Fiber for Breakfast that will air tomorrow online. And we do 52 episodes a year. So every week we're doing this, and we have now recorded over 250 episodes of expert testimony that can be shared with policymakers, industry at large. So I call it really building the record. And so now we are in our 23rd episode of 2025. So before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, our platinum sponsor, Fiber for Breakfast. So today on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest is James Feger, the Senior Vice President for Product Segments at Lumen, to discuss connecting AI future. James currently serves as the Senior Vice President of Product Segments at Lumen Technologies, and prior to his current role, James was the Executive Vice President, Chief Technology Officer at Speedcast. And James held significant roles, including Senior Vice President, General Manager, Service Providers, and Vice President, General Manager of Service Providers. And James' career at CenturyLink was marked by several key positions, such as Vice President of Network Virtualization, Vice President of Technology Operations, Vice President of Infrastructure Support, Interim Chief Technology Officer, Vice President of Network Strategy Development. So pretty much every possible role at CenturyLink. So we really appreciate that. And then, of course, he came up as a IP and network analyst at AT&T. So again, please welcome James Feger from Lumen. All right, so just to kick off, a lot's happening with Lumen over, recently. And, Lumen's kind of emerged as the front runner and leader of AI infrastructure. And it was recently announced that AT&T plans to acquire all Lumen's mass market fiber internet connectivity business. And the AT&T deal appears to be quite different than when Lumen sold off your copper assets to Brightspeed, as the AT&T deal for Lumen is for your kind of premium mass market residential fiber. So to me, that kind of suggests that you guys are doubling down on your enterprise and multi-cloud AI first world strategy. And not only does this appear to it looks like it's really going to help you guys focus on your new business strategy and also inject a lot of capital. I think it's over $5 billion of the acquisition to really help you fund it. So what can you share about Lumen's AI infrastructure strategy, and how should we look at the sale to AT&T?
Yeah, thank you. I think, well, first of all, I'd like to say all of those roles that you listed before, it was because those were opportunities that wasn't getting pushed around. No, I think the deal with AT&T, as you said, really does allow us to focus on the builds that we've been doing and been announcing for the last couple of years around building the infrastructure for the AI economy. For us, it's really a focus, and it's a matter of putting our money where our mouth is in terms of saying we believe that the AI economy is the future. We believe that in order to connect all of these different businesses and communities, it's going to take a lot of work, and a lot of work comes along with investment. And so for us, this is the ability for the company to really just get razor sharp focused, work on the assets to help provide that connectivity, and really give us the ability to continue to grow to support what we believe is going to be a fairly massive step change in network architecture.
So you guys kind of an early mover in this, and what are you guys seeing in the market that really gives you the confidence to kind of be all in on AI infrastructure?
Candidly, it's conversations with the customers and then seeing a lot of that come to fruition. And so we deal with companies of all sizes. We deal with different personas, different industries. And when we sit down and have conversations, whether it's a hyperscaler or a bank or a manufacturer, the story, while the specifics of how they want to implement technology and AI is nuanced to their industry, the ultimate end case and the ultimate traffic volumes and need for multi-cloud connectivity is all the same. And so when we think about where we want to build, how we want to build, we really take a lot of that into account. And when we stand up the services, we start seeing those services get consumed. And so when we think about it, it's like the proof is always in the pudding. And so it's when you build it and it starts getting consumed and you start seeing these use cases come online, that's like, okay, there's one. And we do it again. That's a second one. And before you know it, a single dot is not a trend, but when you start seeing the trend, that's when you really start to get the confidence that this thing is growing. Of course, there is a hype cycle. I think we all have to be open-minded about that. However, the hype cycle is continuing, and the use cases are continuing, and the implementations are continuing. And I think that's like one of the major differences that we in the networking industry are seeing.
So, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of big announcements with big tech companies like Meta and Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. How do these partnerships impact the building of AI infrastructure across the country?
It's interesting because if you think about the architecture of AI and the potential with AI, and we start off with, we have these massive language models and massive data centers with all kinds of horsepower behind them. Those are starting usually in hyperscaler data centers. And so if you think about building a building or building a house, you start with a foundation. And so the hyperscalers in this world they're the foundation of really kicking this thing into gear. And so getting the data centers interconnected, candidly, whether it's between their own data centers, so one of the hyperscalers to another hyperscaler, or hyperscalers directly connected into the backbone, it's a matter of being able to provide on-ramps in and out of these locations where a majority of the traffic is either destined to or originating from. And I think there's step functions. I also think that goes back to my prior answer of why we actually see these use cases getting implemented. If it was difficult to get to the models, if it was difficult to build applications that leverage AI in the hyperscaler data centers, then frankly, I don't think we would see the uptick that we've seen.
So you guys have secured a lot of capital, like almost $9 billion in AI-driven networking contracts with hyperscalers. Can you discuss kind of what your vision is for the AI cloud and how Lumen's going to help transform the hyperscalers' model to the AI future?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see this now. As I was walking through the expo, and you see like edge inferencing, getting the models distributed. Industry-specific models are starting to really become a hot topic with a lot of our clients. And so when we think about what we can do at Lumen, it's much beyond just the idea of saying we're going to connect two buildings together or two different types of businesses together. It's a matter of saying, how can I create essentially a multi-cloud network infrastructure, or a fabric, if you will, that says I need to get from any destination to any destination, or any source to any source, depending on which way on the network you're looking. And so when we think about what to deploy, how to deploy, it's a matter of essentially building this fabric connectivity into the network. So all multi-cloud is built into the network. It's ready. It's capable. But on top of that, when you think about AI, I remind people, it's like, well, we're starting to use AI. I get conversations constantly. We're starting to use AI. Do you know which models you're using? Do you know who you're using? Do you know who your infrastructure, your model provider is? And a lot of companies are candidly doing a lot of this work themselves. But to me, it's the next view of like multi-AI. It's like nobody has a single cloud provider. Nobody's going to have a single AI infrastructure provider. And so the idea is that all these AI clusters are just other cloud endpoints. And so when we think about how to build it out, it's a matter of being able to stitch all of these different locations together seamlessly.
So that's where fiber comes into the picture. Can you talk about the role of fiber in the future of AI infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, I think fortunately for us, we're seeing advancement in the fiber technology. I think with the latency characteristics, latency characteristics, capacity characteristics, the amount of traffic and volume that we're seeing get pushed between these data centers is it's astounding. And candidly, I was with CenturyLink before, as was mentioned, and I just recently returned to Lumen last year. And in between, I was not necessarily deep in the network infrastructure like I was when I was at CenturyLink, and like I am now. And so the eye-opening thing for me that happened between 2018 when I left CenturyLink and 2024 when I returned to Lumen was the amount of capacity that is getting stood up between data centers. It's a number that you can't fathom unless you're in it. And unfortunately, I actually can't talk about that in terms of the numbers, but we are talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of circuits at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigs between buildings. And that's just the start. And right now we are at a limit of optical technologies, and those are continuing to advance. We're at the limit of glass that's in the ground, and so obviously the fiber partners are starting to work on new technologies, hollow core, for example. And so when we think about what does fiber give us, it gives us that capacity, it gives us the latency characteristics, and it gives us the ability to have multiple circuits across single strands. And I think when you think about scale, it's always about how do I build this out to make sure I don't run out. And I always go into house analogies for some reason right now. I think about if you have an electrician come and run an outlet, the electricians always be like, you should probably drop one there and there and there while I'm here, while we're doing it. And when you're plumbing fiber, I think it's a similar concept. Like, where do we want to pick up new locations? How do we want to build this to maybe just go right over there and maybe bring a new community online? So it's a matter of taking advantage of strategic planning as well. So,
on Sunday we had an AI workshop here, and we have a new AI and emerging tech working group. So we're the Fiber Broadband Association is putting a lot of focus on AI and trying to understand the role of fiber and how we can really elevate that. And Peter, who's led a lot of our research, is kind of talks about what the amount of power that AI is demanding, how fiber can help alleviate a lot of the power requirements. And is there when I go to our fiber manufacturers, our members, and I just seen the density of fiber cables, where we've been able to get to, and you mentioned hollow core. What are kind of the innovations that you've seen or we need to see to really kind of change the game on AI infrastructure?
I think density is a great one. If you think about, the most difficult part of this is trenching. And so when you have conduit in the ground, and that conduit is at a fixed size, and the fiber that's in the ground is, certain strand count, and the conduit's full, how do you fix that? Like, pulling new conduit, which we are doing in some cases, is obviously a lot. It's a lot of work. But if you can empty the conduit and blow new strand counts through, I think that's probably one of the best scenarios. And so I think the innovations that we're seeing is strand counts are going up exponentially. They've been continuing to do that. I think the other piece is the ability, we talked about hollow core, for example. I think when we look at the latency characteristics and how we get that operationalized, I think the advancements there need to continue to come bluntly. When you think about fiber cuts, you think about maintenance and repair, you think about how you handle it, bends, all of these things. We've got decades of experience with the current technologies, and when you're implementing something that's brand new, even if it feels similar, works similar, the data shows up, there's a massive operational component that comes along with that. And so I think it's one piece to get it manufactured, it's one piece to draw it out, it's another piece to put it in to remote locations where dispatch and repair and everything else becomes probably top of mind when you need it. So I think that's where we need to continue to focus, is like, how do we make our operational teams excellent at handling new technologies that we're putting into the ground?
So
You didn't expect that answer, I don't think.
how do you, how should our members and everybody here that's in the fiber industry think about AI and where it's heading? You know, Jimmy, Todd, and I were in Kuala Lumpur last summer for a global summit with my peers. And when Malaysia wants to be the whole AI kingdom, when they're looking at what's the next big economic development opportunity for them. And with Singapore, they don't have the real estate, so they are able to put the AI hyperscalers in Kuala Lumpur and then be able to leverage fiber to keep the latency low. And so, as we move to the edge and things like that, what should operators be thinking about and how we should be building our networks for the AI future?
Yeah, and I think this ties back into the prior comment as well, where so when you teed up the question, you're talking about power and fiber and how that helps. I think one of the areas is distribution of the models. Well, a couple things. One, getting fiber to data center, like building data centers closer to power is always going to be better than trying to drag the power closer to the data centers and like just pure cost. Like getting power distribution is more costly and challenging than getting the data to these locations. And so I think, and maybe that's what you're alluding to, which is leveraging fiber, get it out to these locations where you have extra power, you have excess power, makes sense. But then what you have is you have a highly distributed architecture. And so highly distributed architectures, which we all understand in the networking world, is really the key to making this work. And so it's a matter of making sure that you have strong metros. It's a matter of making sure that you're building out in a way that you can support and grow and have reliability, resilience, your path calculations in terms of, are you trying to pick other places up along the way? I think that's one that a lot of us aren't thinking about in the general conversation. I think when you sit down to do the work, we think about it. But if you're blowing through some cities, used to be like, let's go as long as we can, like fire as much as you can. Then it was like, how many add and drops can we have? And now you have to find that balance that says, okay, well, we're going through these locations in the middle of a state where there isn't a lot, but my gosh, there's a lot of power. Suddenly that feels like a good spot to put another data center, right? Because that's where the power is. And so I think when you think about the architectures, it's not the destination you're trying to get to, but what can you pick up along the way, and what can you think about where excess power is going to be, where data centers may pop up. And frankly, that's where being in deep with our clients and our partners really helps, because building data centers, like they already know their plans for the next couple of years. And so when we know where data centers are going to go, we can actually start construction to make sure that we're there and ready for them when they show up.
So I feel like we're at the point in our discussion where I think Sean Evans is going to come out and we need to get some wings. So number 5, we'll get a number 5 wing.
Oops, I will do that if you sing Ice Ice Baby like we were supposed to do last night.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you is, given that you come off as a very serious guy because you've been a network architect and kind of be, the key guy at a number of organizations to be able to build out these, but you like to have a little fun. So
have to have fun, yeah.
So you're Mr. Karaoke, huh?
Well, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm Mr. Karaoke, but for those that I don't know if was anybody in the karaoke last night. So karaoke is actually it's become kind of a thing for a few of us at Lumen, and it was a thing for me at my prior roles. And I wanted to get there. I think it said it closed at 10. I showed up at 9:54, and then I was disappointed that I didn't get on the list. And I was like, well, it's probably really my fault, So I'm sitting here talking about how planning is everything, and then I show up 6 minutes before the karaoke closes. So.
Well, Sherry, can we play some Ice Ice Baby? I'll get a mic out here, and we'll be able to create karaoke.
I could do it.
So one of the things...
All right, stop. Collaborate, endless.
So one of the things that, I spent a lot of time thinking about data, right? And, if those who watched the documentary last night, Teddy, the CTO of Land O'Lakes, he likes to talk about how, as we do digital twins on farms and be able to do precision ag, that we are creating all the data in the world every 2 years. And so the amount of data that we're creating is phenomenal. And I hear you call it data the new oil. Can you explain what that means?
This question, the timing of this question is fantastic, because I was on a panel recently, and I was sitting next to Drew from Jet Zero. And if anybody hasn't paid attention with aviation buffs, I'm sure we all travel a lot. Jet Zero is building a new generation plane. And Drew is the head of IT and cybersecurity. And so the topic was data is the new oil. And Drew said, because the way they're designing it, and I'm not giving away any secrets here, he said this publicly. So on the new plane design, they're actually not sending every single bit of data. Like they're generating an enormous amount of data from the sensors on these planes, but they're actually doing a lot of local processing and then throwing it out. Not even downloading when they land, but throwing it out. And he said, data is the new oil. It's really dirty and it's hard to process. And I said, wow. I was like, okay, that just completely killed the entire topic of the panel. But for us, I think sorry, I just digressed there a little bit. But data is the new oil, and regardless of what industry you're in, we all understand that the power of the data is really the intelligence that you can get from it and how you can adapt and adjust for it. And so moving the data is one thing, accessing the data is actually another, and then mining the data is yet a third. And so when you think about going back to this architecture and the idea of multi-cloud, we have many customers who have petabytes of data sitting in storage somewhere in one part of the world, and all of their AI clusters are in another part of the world, and they want to move these data sets over to let AI get turned loose on it. So you could do this stuff kind of real time back and forth across the network, and that's okay. But what we're starting to see now is like just big chunks, massive data moves, moving it across the globe and dropping it into AI clusters, processing, and then moving back. And when you think about petabytes of data, 10 gig isn't enough, 100 gig isn't enough, right? We're getting way up there in the bandwidth needs. And so that's where, tying this back to fiber, is being able to have that capacity on demand where you need it and when you need it is actually critical to kind of mine the data, clean the data, if you will, in the oil terms. So.
Well, I mean, I think 100 by 20 should be plenty for everybody, you know. So, you know, now that data is the new king, and you guys hear me talk about this a lot. I mean, I'm very worried about secure communications and, you know, how close we are to quantum computing and really putting all our data at risk. And so can you talk about, even though your broadband business was called quantum,
not related.
But, how are you viewing quantum networking and quantum encryption, and how does that fit into your plans?
Yeah, it's pretty important, frankly. We do a lot of networking infrastructure for organizations that, frankly, have the highest stringent security needs. We're working with a few partners, some of them are here actually, on quantum encrypted networking. We've got live quantum encryption capabilities in the network in certain locations already, and we believe that's going to continue to roll out. I think, again, getting back to clean architecture, good planning, and making sure that, candidly, the clients understand what they're asking for and how it's implemented, I think is one of the biggest pieces, because operating this stuff can get complex, and so when you have a conversation with an organization and they have an idea of how key management works and where it's happening, how it's happening, you want to make sure you're actually delivering that. So in the event something happens, break, fix, needs to understand where keys are. All of this is clear, because the last thing you want is not be able to get a circuit restored or not be able to actually get traffic where it needs to be because the architecture is limiting you.
So just, I'll close with kind of a softball for me, but how critical is fiber to the AI future?
I mean, that's a softball. I'd say it's more than critical. I don't think the AI future happens without it. Like, it is the lifeblood that enables this infrastructure. It enables the ecosystem. I think the idea that AI can continue to grow on the trajectory we talked about, going back to this hype cycle concept, without great fiber infrastructure, it just doesn't happen.
You know what I love about our documentary is it's this, and I was talking about Ron and Susie, being with their company since 1992. We've been doing, basically sharpening the axe for 50 years now to be able to get to the point where we can have amazing things happen. And that's why every day is just more exciting than next, because and just for network architects and people that are building these AI networks of the future, James, I just really appreciate what you're doing for industry and what you're doing for the next generations to really enable this future. So thank you very much. And I hope that you guys all, give me feedback, send notes in during Fiber for Breakfast. I love your ideas on topics, but again, I just love to be able to have industry luminaries like James that are doing amazing things and learn something. So please join me next Wednesday. We'll have Ron Westfall, analyst in residence from Hyperframe, to discuss the latest research on agentic AI and the future of fiber, powering scalable, resilient, and intelligent networks. So you're not going to want to miss that. So thanks, James. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.